The galaxy had always been a place of mystery and danger, but there was one rule that every species in the universe followed without question. The Milky Way was forbidden. No one, not even the most powerful of civilizations, dared to enter. There were countless rumors about what lay within. Some said the galaxy was cursed, others claimed that terrible monsters roamed the stars, devouring any who entered. But to Captain Drex, leader of the Varn Empire, it didn't matter. He was tired of hearing stories. He was tired of the limitations imposed by old legends. He saw an opportunity, a chance to seize untold riches hidden in the heart of the Forbidden Galaxy. Drex had always been a risk-taker, a man who believed that fortune favored the bold. The Galactic Union, which ruled over most of the known universe, had issued a clear warning to all: do not enter the Milky Way. But no one had ever explained why. It was simply a rule that everyone followed, without question. Drex hated rules. He had built his empire on bending them, on breaking them when necessary. And this rule, this strange prohibition, was the one he would break. The Varn Empire's fleet, consisting of 20 ships, prepared to cross the boundary into the Milky Way. The ship's engines hummed with power as the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. Drex sat in his command chair, staring out into the vastness of space. He knew the risks, but he didn't care. There was no going back now. The crew whispered nervously among themselves, some with doubts, others with excitement. They all knew the stories, the warnings, but none of them had ever believed them. And now, they were crossing into the unknown. As the ships crossed the threshold, a strange silence filled the air. Drex looked at the communication console, waiting for the usual warning signals from the Union. But there was nothing. No alerts, no incoming messages. For a brief moment, it felt as though they had entered a dead zone. There was nothing out here, no life, no movement. It was as if the galaxy had been abandoned. The Milky Way stretched out before them like a giant, empty canvas, dark and silent. It didn't seem dangerous at all. At first, everything appeared to be fine. The ships flew in formation, scanning the stars and planets for anything of interest. No hostile forces, no signs of life. No ships from the Union, no alien fleets. It was as if the galaxy had been forgotten, left to decay in the cold void of space. But then, things began to get strange. The first sign came when one of the Varn scouts, a small reconnaissance vessel, went silent. Its communication signals vanished without a trace. Drex ordered another scout to go after it, but there was no response from the second team either. A strange unease began to settle over the fleet. The crew started to question their decision. Maybe the rumors were true. Maybe the galaxy was cursed. But Drex was not one to turn back, especially not now. He pushed forward, determined to find out what had happened to the missing ships. It wasn't long before the fleet picked up something unexpected. A signal, faint but clear, coming from deep within the galaxy. It wasn't an alien signal or a natural phenomenon. It was a human-made signal. Drex's heart skipped a beat. Humans. The humans had left the galaxy centuries ago, or so the story went. They had disappeared, choosing to abandon their colonies and their great civilizations to live in peace somewhere beyond the stars. But now, here was proof that humans had once again left their mark on this place. A satellite, small and old, floating among the stars, still broadcasting a signal. The message it carried was simple. Welcome to Earth. We are watching. Drex's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. He had expected danger, but not this. What was going on here? Why had humans left behind such a cryptic message? Who had left it? His mind raced with questions, but there were no answers. He ordered the fleet to change course and follow the signal. They had to know more. As they approached the satellite, Drex's ship suddenly experienced a power surge. The lights flickered, and the ship's systems malfunctioned. It wasn't just his ship. Every ship in the fleet was affected. The same strange interference seemed to be spreading, blocking communications and scrambling their navigational systems. Panic began to rise among the crew, but Drex remained calm. He had been in worse situations before. He ordered the fleet to remain steady, telling them to trust their training. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The galaxy around them was too quiet, too still. It was as if the stars themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something. And Drex had a sinking feeling that whatever it was, they were walking right into it. Suddenly, another transmission came through, this one loud and clear. It wasn't from the satellite. It came directly through the ship's communication system. The voice that came through was distorted, crackling with static, but the words were unmistakable. "You should not be here." Drex felt a chill run down his spine. The voice wasn't human. It didn't belong to any species he recognized. And yet, it was speaking in perfect Varn. Whoever, or whatever, was watching them knew exactly who they were. The voice repeated its warning. "You should not be here." And then, everything went silent. Drex turned to his crew, his eyes hard. "We are going forward," he said firmly. "There is no turning back now." But in the back of his mind, the doubt continued to grow. What had they gotten themselves into? As the fleet moved deeper into the Milky Way, the sense of being watched became stronger. The stars above them seemed colder, as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Drex couldn't shake the feeling that they had broken a rule far more dangerous than any they had ever known. And yet, it was too late to turn back now. The Milky Way had been forbidden for a reason, and Drex was about to learn exactly why. The deeper they ventured into the Milky Way, the more unsettling the journey became. Drex kept his focus, but the crew's nerves were beginning to fray. They had been searching for answers, but the deeper they went, the more questions piled up. The galaxy was still eerily silent. No signs of life. No attacks. Just an empty, endless stretch of space. Yet something felt wrong, like they were intruding on a forgotten place, a secret that had been buried for far too long. The strange message they received from the mysterious voice echoed in Drex's mind. "You should not be here." It wasn't just a warning. It was a command. Drex shook it off, focusing on the mission. His goal was clear: to find the riches hidden within this forbidden galaxy, to prove that the legends about it were nothing more than stories. But the more time passed, the more his confidence began to falter. The absence of any life forms, the strange interference with their systems. It was becoming clear that something was watching them, something powerful. Days turned into weeks, and the crew continued to encounter strange occurrences. Ship systems malfunctioned at random. Lights flickered without explanation. At one point, a strange noise echoed through the hull of the ship, like a faint, distant hum, almost like a whisper. No one could explain it, but it sent shivers down the spines of the crew. And then, they found something. In the distance, a flickering signal appeared on the scanners. It was weak, but unmistakable, a human-made signal. Drex's heart raced. It couldn't be. The humans had left this galaxy centuries ago. Yet here it was again, a piece of their past, a trace of their presence. The signal seemed to be coming from a derelict spacecraft, drifting alone among the stars. It looked old, covered in the dust of time, but the technology was unmistakable. It was human. The ship was dead in the water, its systems long since failed. Yet the signal continued to broadcast, a silent cry for attention. Drex ordered his team to investigate. They boarded the ship cautiously, weapons at the ready. Inside, the atmosphere was stale, the air thick with the smell of decay. The ship was abandoned, its halls empty and cold. But as they moved through the corridors, they found something unexpected: an old data drive. Drex ordered the device to be brought back to the main ship, and when it was plugged into their computers, the truth began to unfold. The data drive was filled with records, video footage, and logs, human footage. Footage of war, of battles fought against alien forces. Footage of humanity's rise, of their technological advancements, and ultimately, their escape from the galaxy. But what struck Drex the most was the final log, a message left behind by the ship's captain, who spoke with a sense of finality and warning. Humanity was too powerful. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers. We built machines that no one could match. We fought wars, we destroyed entire fleets, and eventually, we realized the truth. The universe was afraid of us, and so we left. We left to protect ourselves, and to protect the rest of the galaxy from what we had become. Do not come here. The Milky Way is not a place for you. Drex stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans hadn't just disappeared, they had left for a reason. They had made the decision to remove themselves from the galaxy, to cut ties with the rest of the universe. But why had they left behind these warnings? Why had they made Earth, the cradle of humanity, a place that no one could enter? Suddenly, another message flashed on the screen, breaking Drex's thoughts. It was a new transmission, and it was coming through their communication system. The voice that spoke was calm, but it carried an undeniable weight. "We warned you," the voice said. "Now you will see the consequences." Before Drex could react, the ship's alarms blared, a deep, resonating tone that rattled through the walls of the vessel. The fleet's shields powered up, and Drex quickly checked the scanners. A massive ship had appeared on their sensors, far too advanced to belong to any known race. It was human, but it was not the same humanity they had read about in the data logs. This was something else, something far more evolved, far more dangerous. The ship was enormous, its shape unlike anything Drex had ever seen. It seemed to pulse with energy, as if it were alive. The new ship didn't attack immediately. Instead, it simply hovered there watching. Drex's crew was on edge, waiting for the inevitable strike. But it didn't come. Instead, a calm, deliberate message was transmitted directly into their minds, bypassing the ship's communication system altogether. "We warned you. Leave now or face extinction." The words were clear, cold, and final. Drex didn't hesitate. He ordered the fleet to prepare for a fight. He would not back down, not now, not when they had come this far. But as the crew scrambled to ready the ships for combat, Drex couldn't shake the feeling that they were hopelessly outmatched. The human ship, still hovering silently, seemed to pulse with energy. Its presence was overwhelming, like the weight of an ancient power that had been dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Drex knew that if they attempted to engage, they might be wiped out in an instant. But retreating, that was not an option. Not for him, not for the Varn Empire. Just as Drex opened his mouth to issue a command, the human ship finally spoke again, this time through a single clear sentence that sent chills down his spine. "Your journey ends here." The fleet's shields fled to life as Drex ordered them to brace for impact. The unknown power of the human ship was unlike anything they had ever faced. It was as if the galaxy itself was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Drex's mind raced with the possibilities. Was this the end of his empire? The end of everything he had worked for? He didn't know, but he was about to find out. Drex's heart pounded in his chest as the massive human ship loomed before them, its dark silhouette casting a shadow over the fleet. He watched in horror as the ship's strange, pulsating energy field intensified, surrounding it like a shield. He gave the order to fire, but the weapon systems on his ships failed to respond. The energy pulses from the human ship seemed to be interfering with everything. It was as though the very space around them was being altered, reshaped by a force far beyond anything they had ever encountered. "Captain, the weapons are offline," his chief engineer shouted from the communications panel. "We can't fire. We can't even get a proper lock on them." Drex slammed his fist against the armrest of his command chair. Panic was spreading through the fleet, but he forced himself to stay focused. The situation was dire, but he had always been a man of action. They had to do something, or they would be annihilated. The human ship's communication systems suddenly came online, and a voice, calm and serene, echoed through every ship in the fleet. It wasn't broadcast through speakers. It was in their minds, a telepathic message that bypassed all technology. Drex could feel it in the back of his mind, a cold presence that made his skin crawl. Your presence here is unwelcome. Leave, or we will make you leave. Drex clenched his jaw, refusing to show fear. We're not going anywhere, he muttered under his breath. But inside, doubt began to creep in. The sheer power of the human ship was beyond anything they could comprehend. It wasn't just a battle they were facing. It was something much larger, something older, something that had been waiting for them. The voice spoke again, but this time it was more forceful. You do not understand the consequences of your actions. We have been watching you, Captain Drex, watching all of you, and now you will learn why the Milky Way was forbidden. Drex didn't understand. What did the humans mean by that? Why had they left, and why had they sealed off this galaxy for centuries? It was all too much. His crew was terrified, whispering among themselves about the unknown power of the humans. Drex couldn't blame them. He too was afraid, but there was no turning back. The massive human ship began to move, slowly at first, then with terrifying speed. It hovered closer, until it was just a few hundred meters away from the fleet. Drex could see the sleek lines of the ship, the pulsating energy field around it, and the bright lights that seemed to shine from within. It was beautiful and terrifying. The sheer magnitude of its power was enough to make Drex's hands shake. And then, without warning, a burst of energy shot out from the ship, striking one of Drex's fleet's smaller vessels. The explosion was instantaneous. The ship disintegrated in a flash of light, leaving nothing but debris floating in space. Drex's breath caught in his throat. He had lost a ship, a crew member, no, many crew members, in an instant. It was like watching a bug being crushed underfoot, but the reality was far worse. His empire's fleet was being destroyed, and there was nothing they could do about it. The human ship spoke again. This is the last warning. Leave. The crew was in chaos. Some wanted to fight back, to charge the human ship and make a final stand. Others screamed for retreat. But Drex was frozen in place, staring at the wreckage of his ship. He knew they couldn't win. But he refused to surrender. Not like this. Not without answers. Prepare to board the human ship, Drex ordered. He knew it was risky, possibly even suicidal, but he wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. The fleet's remaining ships moved into position, and Drex ordered his most trusted officers to prepare for an assault. They would board the human ship and demand answers, or they would die trying. Minutes later, Drex stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the enormous human vessel as it loomed overhead. He could feel the tension in the air. The crew was nervous, but they followed his orders without question. They had no choice now. Their fate was in their hands. Boarding teams, prepare for launch, Drex said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. This is our only chance. The docking pods were launched, and one by one, the Van soldiers boarded the human ship. They moved through the dark, eerie corridors, their weapons raised, their senses heightened. Everything felt wrong. The walls of the ship seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, and the air was thick with tension. It didn't take long for them to encounter the first of the humans. They were not what Drex had expected. The humans who greeted them were tall, slender, and glowing with an otherworldly light. They didn't move like normal beings. Their eyes shone with a strange intelligence, and their faces were calm, almost serene. There was something unsettling about them, something ancient and wise that made Drex's skin crawl. We knew you would come. One of the humans spoke, their voice soft but powerful, reverberating in Drex's mind. Drex stepped forward, his anger boiling over. What are you? Why did you seal off the Milky Way? Why are you threatening my people? The human who spoke smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was a knowing smile, one that made Drex's blood run cold. We are the ascended humans. We are the last of your kind. And we are the reason the Milky Way was forbidden. Drex's mind raced. Ascended humans. Last of their kind. What did they mean? The questions burned in his mind. But before he could speak, the human continued. You do not understand what you have stumbled upon. The Milky Way was sealed off to protect the universe from the chaos humanity once created. We became too powerful, too dangerous, and so we left. But we left a warning behind. Drex was stunned. A warning? For what? The ascended human's eyes glowed brighter. To keep you from making the same mistakes. To keep you from repeating history. Before Drex could respond, the human raised a hand, and the entire group of Vaughn soldiers froze in place. Drex's body went rigid, his mind overwhelmed with a flood of visions. He saw humanity's rise, their great empires, their wars, their conflicts. He saw their machines of war, their fleets of unimaginable power. And then he saw the moment of their departure, the moment they left the galaxy, leaving everything behind. You were not meant to be here, the ascended human's voice echoed through Drex's mind. This galaxy was meant to forget us. But you were foolish enough to break the rule. Drex struggled against the power holding him, but it was no use. He had made a grave mistake. The humans were not just survivors. They were something more, something older. They were the guardians of the galaxy now, and their power was beyond comprehension. And Drex had just woken them up. Drex felt his body weaken under the weight of the ascended human's power. Every muscle in his body screamed, but he couldn't move. His mind was being flooded with images, memories that weren't his own. He saw wars fought between humanity and alien species, entire star systems burned to the ground in the pursuit of power. But there was something more. As the visions continued to assault him, he began to see a pattern. Humanity had reached the peak of their potential, but their power had become a curse, one that threatened the very fabric of the universe. The ascended human's voice reverberated in his mind once again, cold and detached. We were the architects of our own destruction. We became gods among mortals, and in doing so, we doomed ourselves and everyone around us. The Milky Way became a place of chaos, a galaxy on the brink of collapse. The energy we unleashed, our technology, our machines, our wars, tore at the very balance of the universe. Drex's thoughts were jumbled, but he understood one thing clearly: they had made a grave mistake. He had broken the ancient rule, and now he was facing the consequences. The ascended human slowly lowered his hand, releasing Drex from the invisible grip that held him. But the damage had already been done. Why didn't you just destroy us? Drex's voice was hoarse, struggling to find words. Why let us come here in the first place? The ascended human's glowing eyes studied him, almost with pity. We did not destroy you because we were not your enemies. We are your past, your future, and your warning. But you chose to ignore it. You dared to break the seal we placed on this galaxy, and now you will pay the price. The tension in the air was thick, and Drex felt a deep sense of fear creeping into his bones. The power of the ascended humans was overwhelming, and he realized just how small his empire truly was in the grand scheme of the universe. The other ships in his fleet were still drifting aimlessly, their crews in panic, unable to do anything to help. We sealed the Milky Way because we feared what we had become. But you, your species, have been following in our footsteps. You are repeating the mistakes we made. You are becoming what we once were, a force of destruction. Drex tried to speak, to defend himself, but the weight of the ascended human's words crushed him. He had believed they were just explorers, looking for power, riches, and glory. But now, he saw that they had stumbled into a trap that had been set long ago by those who had once ruled the galaxy. The ascended human stepped closer, his presence now filling the room. Your curiosity has already caused irreversible damage. The Milky Way is not what you think it is. The energy that remains here, the power that flows through it, is not natural. It is the residue of a power far greater than you can comprehend. Drex felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine. What are you saying? What happens now? The ascended human raised his hands, and Drex's vision blurred. He could feel something happening, something shifting in the very fabric of reality. The universe itself seemed to respond, as if it were a living entity. The stars outside began to flicker, and the air in the human ship seemed to hum with energy. "You have awoken something that should have stayed asleep," the ascended human said, his voice low and regretful. "Now the galaxy will face the consequences of your actions." Drex could see flashes of light, fleeting glimpses of other worlds, other civilizations. He saw massive ships battling in the void, entire planets being torn apart by the forces humanity had once unleashed. The Milky Way was not just a forbidden galaxy. It was the graveyard of ancient civilizations, a place where power had destroyed everything it touched. "There is no going back," the ascended human said quietly. "You have unleashed forces that cannot be contained." Drex fell to his knees, the weight of the truth crushing down on him. The ascended humans had not sealed off the Milky Way to protect themselves from outsiders. They had done it to protect the universe from the destructive power that lay within. The galaxy was a ticking time bomb, and Drex's curiosity had set it ticking once more. The human's voice softened, almost as if he were speaking to an old friend. "We tried to warn you. We tried to make you understand. But now, you must face the consequences of your hubris." Drex lifted his head, eyes wide with realization. "What? What do we do now?" The ascended human did not answer immediately. He turned away, staring out into the void of space, his form becoming almost translucent, like a ghost of the past. "There is nothing to be done. The forces you have awakened will now unfold, and the galaxy will be reshaped. Your species, you will have to find your own way. But know this, the universe will not forgive you for what you have done." Suddenly, the energy around Drex grew unbearably intense, and the human ship began to pulse with raw, uncontrolled power. The Van soldiers, still reeling from the shock of the ascended human's words, had begun to flee, knowing that nothing they could do would change the outcome. The ascended human turned one final time to Drex, his expression unreadable. "You are free to leave," he said simply, "but remember, you were warned." With that, the human's form began to fade, disappearing into the energy of the ship as if he were never truly there. The ship itself shuddered, and Drex could feel the temperature drop, the atmosphere around him growing colder. The stars outside were no longer just stars. They were blinding, swirling with the chaotic energy of the galaxy, and Drex knew that the universe was about to change forever. He stumbled to his feet, his mind racing. The fleet was in disarray, and his own ship was barely functioning. The Van Empire, so powerful and proud, was now at the mercy of forces far beyond their control. The ascended humans had given them a chance, a warning, but Drex had ignored it. Now, the consequences of his actions were becoming clear. The Milky Way had not just been forbidden, it had been sealed off for a reason. And now, the galaxy was waking up, and there was no escaping the wrath of what they had unleashed. Drex turned toward the chaos unfolding on his ship, his heart heavy with the weight of failure. The story of the Van Empire, of humanity's rise and fall, had come full circle. He had sought to conquer the galaxy, to break its rules and find glory. But now, all he could do was watch as the universe prepared to reshape itself around the forces he had awoken. The journey had ended. The galaxy had spoken, and Drex would never forget the lesson it had taught him.